"She is mine now," the Duke of Varley said, and the whole length of the supper room went silent. He had not raised his voice. He never did. But every fork stopped, every fan stilled, and the man at the head of the table, Lord Marden, who had made a sport of his own wife for 11 years, went the colour of cold ash. Julian Ashcombe, Duke of Varley, did not look at Marden at all. He looked only at the woman standing rigid beside her husband's chair, in a gown 3 seasons out of fashion, her gloved hands folded so tightly the seams had begun to give. He had come to this house for a horse. That was the plain truth of it. Marden owed him a hunter and a great deal of money besides, and Julian had ridden through 2 days of rain to collect. He had not expected to find the man's wife serving the wine like a housemaid, while a painted woman in Marden's own diamonds laughed from the sofa by the fire. Her name, he had learned within the first quarter hour, was Eleanor. She had been married to Marden at 17, sold, in the honest word of it, by a father drowning in debt, and Marden had spent the 11 years since making certain the whole county knew he had bought her cheap and regretted even that. Julian had watched her carry a decanter to the mistress's elbow. He had watched the mistress hold up her glass without a word of thanks, without a glance, as though Eleanor were furniture that happened to pour. And he had watched Eleanor's face, the small, composed, unbreakable stillness of it, and something in his chest that he had kept iron shut for a long time had shifted on its hinge. "You have had too much wine, Varley," Marden said now, trying for a laugh that came out cracked. "I have had none," Julian answered. "I came for the hunter. You do not have it. You do not have the 2,000 you owe me either. So I will take payment in the one thing in this house you have never valued, and I find I cannot leave behind. You cannot be serious." "I am never anything else." Julian set his own glass down untouched and turned at last to Eleanor. When he spoke to her his voice changed, lost its edge, gent to something she plainly had not heard directed at herself in a very long while. "Madam, forgive me. I have spoken of you across a table as though you were a debt to be settled, and that is beneath us both. So I will speak to you instead." Eleanor did not answer. Her eyes had gone very wide and very dark. Down the sofa the mistress had stopped laughing. "You are not chattel," Julian said quietly only to her. "You never were. No paper your father signed made you so, and no cruelty of his has made you so, whatever he told you across 11 years. I'm the Duke of Varley. I have more house than I know what to do with, and no one in any of it who is glad to see me. I am asking you to leave with me tonight, not as a payment, not as a prize, but as a woman freeing herself from a man who does not deserve the coat he stands in." "You'll not touch her," Marden said, rising. Julian looked at him for the first time. It was not a long look, but Marden sat back down. "The law's on your side, Marden," Julian said. "I know it. She is your wife, and I have no right to her. But the law has left this room, and it is only us now, and I have watched you for 2 hours pour contempt on a woman worth 10 of you, while you paraded that poor creature by the fire in her jewels. If you wish to keep Eleanor, you will have to keep her, in front of all these people. You will have to say aloud that you cherish her, and mean it, and I do not think you can, because I do not think you have ever once tried." The silence stretched. Marden opened his mouth. Nothing came. Eleanor set down the decanter. She set it down very carefully in the exact center of the sideboard, the way a woman does a thing when her hands are shaking and she does not want it seen. Then she straightened, and she looked not at her husband, not at the mistress, not at the staring guests, but at Julian. "You do not know me, your grace," she said. Her voice was low and steady, and it cost her everything. "You have been in this house 4 hours. That is true. Then why?" Julian considered it. He was aware of 40 pairs of eyes. He found he did not care about a single one of them. "'Cause I have spent my whole life," he said, "being feared and flattered and endured, and I know the difference between a person and a possession the way only a man who has been treated as neither can. And I watched you thank a scullery girl who spilled the soup when no one in this room has thanked you in years. A woman who has been given nothing and still gives, that is not a debt, madam. That is the rarest thing I have ever seen. I would be a fool to ride away from it into the rain." For one long moment Eleanor Marden, who had learned at 17 to feel nothing where feeling only brought pain, stood at the edge of a door she had never let herself believe existed. Then she walked around the table, past her husband, past the woman in his diamonds, and put her cold-gloved hand into the Duke of Varley's offered one. "I have no cloak," she said, absurdly, as though that were the obstacle. "You will not need yours," Julian said, and swept his own from his shoulders and settled it around hers, and if his hands lingered a half-second at her collar, no one but Eleanor knew it. Marden found his voice at the door. "You'll regret this, Varley. She's cold as a stone. Ask any man who's—" He did not finish. Julian had turned, and whatever Marden saw in his face closed his mouth like a slammed gate. "She was never cold," Julian said. "You simply never gave her a reason to be otherwise. Send her things to Varley Court. Send the reckoning of my 2,000 as well. I will take it from your keeping of her, and you will find the sum I forgive you larger than the sum you owe. Good night." The rain had gentled to a fine mist by the time they reached his carriage. Eleanor climbed in without help, then sat rigidly against the far door as though expecting, even now, to be corrected for taking up too much room. "You may sit as you like," Julian said gently, settling opposite. "There is no one here to please. There will not be at Varley Court ever again." She did not move for a mile. Then, by slow degrees, as the wheels found their rhythm on the wet road, she let herself ease back against the squabs. It was a small thing. It undid him more than any grand gesture could have. "They will say I ran off with a duke," she said to the dark window. "They will say I was Marden's wife and now I am worse. They will say what they like. They always do. I have been the terror of 3 counties since I was 30, for the crime of not caring to charm them. You will find, madam, that a bad reputation is chiefly quiet." The smallest sound escaped her, not quite a laugh, but the ancestor of one. "I have forgotten how to be spoken to kindly," she confessed. "You must forgive me if I flinch. It is not you. It is only that I have learned to expect the blow after the soft word." "Then I will give you soft words and no blow," Julian said, "until you forget to wait for it, however long that takes." Varley Court, when they reached it near dawn, rose out of the mist like something out of an old tale. Grey stone, 100 dark windows. A great arched door thrown open with a butler who had clearly not expected his master to return with a lady, and who recovered with the flawless blankness of a man who had served the family 40 years. "Mrs. Julian caught himself. The Rose Room's Hargreave. Fires lit, a maid to wait on her, and word to the housekeeper that this lady is mistress here in all but the saying of it, and is to be treated so. She has been treated otherwise long enough." Eleanor stopped in the middle of the vast cold hall. He turned back for her. "Your Grace," she said, "I cannot be your mistress. I will not be. I have watched what that makes of a woman. I have poured her wine for 11 years. I would rather go back to the rain." Julian crossed to her at once. "You mistake me," he said, and there was something almost stricken in it. "God, madam, you mistake me entirely. I did not carry you out of that house to make of you what he made of that poor woman by the fire. I mean to petition Parliament. It is slow and it is ugly, and it will drag your name through every scandal sheet in the kingdom. But there is a way to be free of Marden entirely, and I have the money and the rank to force it. And when it is done," he stopped. He was not a man who spoke of feeling. He made himself do it. "When it is done, I mean to ask you to be the Duchess of Varley. Not soon. When you are free and healed and want me, if you ever do, and not 1 hour before." She stared at him. "You would marry a divorced woman, a duke." "I would marry you," Julian said. "The title can go hang. It has given me nothing but cold rooms and colder company. You gave a scullery girl a kind word after a life of unkindness. I want to spend the rest of mine finding out what you might do with a house full of them." The proceedings took the better part of 2 years. They were, as he had promised, slow and ugly. The scandal sheets did their worst. Marden fought it out of spite until his own creditors turned on him, and he fled to the continent with the woman in the diamonds, who left him within the month. Through all of it, Julian never once came to Eleanor's door uninvited, never once asked for more than she offered, and offered himself a great deal. Long walks in the winter gardens, books left where she would find them, a mare of her own she named Mist, and a slow, steady, undemanding constancy that she distrusted for a full year, and then one grey afternoon in the library suddenly did not. He was reading by the fire. She crossed the room and sat, not opposite him as she always had, but on the settle beside him, close enough that her shoulder touched his arm. He went very still, as a man does who is afraid to frighten off a wild thing. You have never once tried to take my hand, she said. I have wanted to, Julian said, every day for 22 months. I decided it must be yours to give. Eleanor put her hand in his. This time she was not shaking. They were married in the spring, quietly, in the little grey chapel on the Varley land, with only Hargrave and the housekeeper and the stable boy who cared for Miss to see it. She wore not a grand gown but a simple one of dove-grey silk, and she did not once fold her hands too tightly, because there was no longer any seam in her life that threatened to give. You said, in Marden's supper room, she reminded him afterward as they walked out into the pale April light, that a woman given nothing who still gives is the rarest thing you had ever seen. I remember. You were wrong, Julian. The rarest thing is a man who feared the whole world and chose, of everything, to be gentle. I have poured wine for the other kind. I know the difference now. He drew her hand through his arm and held it there, over his heart, where it stayed. Then we are each other's rare thing, the Duke of Varley said, and I intend to guard mine to the last day I am given. She is mine now, and I, madam, at long and grateful last, am wholly and only yours. And in the years that followed, at Varley Court, no wine was ever again poured by a wife with folded hands. There was laughter in those cold grey rooms at last, and warmth in the 100 windows, and a duke who had frightened 3 counties learned to be feared by none who knew him, because the woman he had lifted out of the rain had, by simply staying, taught him that the softest word need never come before a blow. It came in that house, before a kiss, and after one, and all the ordinary contented hours between.